Welcome to This Youth Generation, Life of a Youth Worker, Season 2. I'm your host, Deon D. Author and Youth Life Skills Coach. I'm looking forward to interacting with you to discuss critical issues concerning today's youth generation. So if you're a parent, educator, youth, or youth worker, this program will be a valuable resource for you. Let's get to it. All right, This Youth Generation, Deon Price, Life of a Youth Worker. This is Season 2 of this podcast that talks about any and everything associated that affects today's youth generation. And this episode is unique because it brings in an interview with this individual who has been in the field for most of his adult life, and I've been knowing him for close to 20 years now. We have a special guest, Mr. T-Mazz. How you doing, sir? And thank you for joining us.
I'm pretty good. Thank you so much for having me. It's a blessing to be here.
Right on.
20 years. That's a long time.
Man, we go back to the YMCA that goes the early 2000s, bro. When you was running around there balling.
That's before they called it the Kroc Center.
Right. Oh, years before the Kroc Center, right?
Yep.
History. So it's been a pleasure to see you evolve and grow into the impact and the man that you are right now. And I remember you in the early days talking about what you wanted to do, and you did it. You told me a long time ago what your projection was as a young man, and darn no, you did it. And I've been monitoring your progress. Not only have you done that with your educational ambition, but you also stayed true to service. And on top of all that, you never let go of the fact that you was, is, and always will be an artist at heart. So talk a little bit about you, T-Mazz, the artist, and we'll go into your journey as a social impact person.
Okay. So T-Mazz, originally from East Palo Alto, spent a lot of my teenage and adult years in Solano County. As the artist, I do rap. I make beats as well. I got a few projects out right now. One that I'm working on, set to release on February 2nd, 2024 on my website called lovecloudrestore.com. The title of the project is Unbreakable. And so, yeah, Bay Area hip hop artist and producer, just trying to branch out musically, do a lot of other things in the artistry category, like, writing books and consulting with other people. But yeah, music has always been a passion of mine for a lot of years.
Well, that's beautiful. That's why this is a great conversation to have, because part of the conversation I wanted to have is how the industry of hip hop affects today's youth generation. Now, you as an artist and also a PhD educated individual, how do you blend the two? And we're going to talk about you being an author as well. But let's go with the authorship first. What is the book about in that aspect and how it affects today's youth generation? Let's talk about the book.
Okay. So I released 2 books in Barnes & Noble. The first one is a memoir, and it sort of talks about, not sort of, but it directly discusses my life experiences, different barriers I've had to overcome in life. It talks about the mentorship that I've received in life and the mentorship that I'm providing right now through the services at my office and just in my career outside of my regular work. It also discusses, different people that I've lost, their inspiration in my life, and my calling to do music. So that's the memoir, and it's titled A Legendary Run. It also comes with a soundtrack titled A Legendary Run, which is on Apple right now and different streaming platforms. And also came out with a children's book. The children's book focuses on emotional intelligence, and it is an ethnic children's book, and it's illustrated by Ari James. Yep. So both of those books, My First Teachers, the children's book, and A Legendary Run, the memoir, are both available in Barnes & Noble. We've been on a little book tour, too, since the summer, just going to various Barnes & Noble's locations throughout the country, really. But we've been doing a lot of our focus right here on the West Coast. So we've been hit about 10 dates so far, just, doing in-store book signings and just trying to get the message out there.
Right on. Again, I appreciate your contribution on reaching this community on any level, literary and the music industry as well, and then you're actually 9 to 5. So talk about your secular work, how that connects to your journey and what you're contributing on a daily day basis in your office.
Okay. So I went to school to be a clinical psychologist. I have my doctorate in clinical psychology. I Something I specialize in is like neuropsychological testing, uh, working with a population who has been found incompetent to stand trial, as well as working with the elder population, as well as sex offender population. So I've gained some experience working with various different types of populations in the mental health field. And as a psychologist, as a Black psychologist, it's not many of us. So I'm often, sort of outnumbered and things, but a lot of my work has been focused on destigmatizing mental health in communities that I come from, as well as just being a vessel for, to pass on this information and this knowledge to other generations.
Right. Have you noticed the relationship with mental health with the Black community has changed over the year? It's been a stigma. Do you see that changing to the point where we are able to honestly address our issues of mental health without it being such a stigma, and how it connects with the youth generation? Because our parents didn't talk about it. So our generation's like, it's not
Yeah.
some common conversation. How are you seeing that in your field right now? Is that changing?
You know what? I'm seeing the younger generation a little bit more open to uh, accepting and seeking mental health treatment these days versus when I was coming up. As a teenager, even into my young adulthood, it was always like taboo to you're considered crazy if you went to go to therapy, even if it's for like an adjustment issue or depression or anxiety or something on a milder end of the considering the severity of how mental health symptoms can impact a person. Some certain symptoms can be on a milder end, and even if you were to go and seek those types of services around that time when I was coming up, you were considered crazy.
Right.
But these days, I do see more rappers talking about it in their music. I see more of a community initiative to be accepting towards mental health with the various different programs and services they have in different communities and neighborhoods. Definitely a little bit more than when I was coming up, but I think it still needs to be more growth in that area because there's people dealing with issues that they never will go and ask for help about because of some of these stigmas.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay. And that's definitely an impact on our community that will always be something that we can improve upon. So with that in mind, how much of your education and your profession do you put in your material?
Yeah, over the last couple of years, the term code switching has been prominent, in the field, and I've even seen myself, comfortable talking about certain things with certain crowds of people. You know what I mean? Um, But as of lately, especially with the new project that I'm putting out and some of the recent songs that I've put out, I've been more comfortable at just embracing who I am from both sides of the spectrum, from the neighborhood and communities that I come from, and also considering the professional accomplishments that I've gained, bottling all of that up and presenting it to a fan base and hoping that they'll be at the very least become educated or inspired. Um, so just going back a little bit, it is how do I do it? Well, I have a song called I Got Joy, and that's one of the newest records that I put out. And it's the first single from this project called Unbreakable. And it focuses on emotional intelligence. It focuses on being able to embrace our ups and downs, but also realizing that joy is inside of us and it is possible to accomplish joy by just by using gratitude, right? And being appreciative for certain things that certain people will consider small, and then you can take it a step further from there by just appreciating life and the people around us, and the things that the resources that we have.
So I love impact and lyric as an artist and a writer myself. And this is what got me. Check this out. She says, I got joy. Since I was a little black boy, the world tried to take it. Why so much hatred? You think you can feel it? Feel it, you can believe it. That's from the thing. Break that down? What is that?
Wow.
Elaborate on that.
Wow. Wow.
That's some bars right there, bro.
Yes, yes, sir. Because I got joy since I was a little black boy. Since I was young, the first emotion that I identify with was just being happy. You know, I've seen that in my family. I've seen that with my mom. I remember that the warmth, the knowledge that I would get, the support that how positive and nurtured I felt just being around certain people in my family growing up. So one of the first emotions I identified with was happiness and joy, right? But things would begin to happen, you know, like in my particular life, substance use impacted my family heavily when I was during my childhood, and it tore some of us apart. Also brought some of us back together, but ultimately, some of those experiences would open me up to seeing emotions that weren't so positive.
Wow.
So experiencing sadness, experiencing grief and loss and stuff like that would come after that joy. But as I continue to live, as I continue to listen to some of the elders in my family, and trust in God, joy was always restored every single time. So far in my life.
You grew up. You said EPA, right? What impact? I mean, with the Jurassic impact, you went from that and all of that experience and all that. How did you navigate that environment, and then eventually what led you out to Solano County?
It was a miracle, really. I think it was just a miracle. But just to just to talk about particular steps, I have my mother has gone through a lot, and she's also been extremely resilient. But my direct example of what resilience is, just seeing what she's overcome in life and how she kind of bossed up for her family and continues to boss up for her family, coming from East Palo Alto to and losing all that we lost back then. But her responding to that by completing substance use treatment, completing multiple degrees, enrolling in a doctorate program herself, and then just becoming a director at various county organizations and government organizations. It was all inspiration to me. But my mom got us up out of the East Palo Alto and moved us around the Bay Area in different communities. They tried hard to get us in communities where the violence wasn't like it was where I grew up at. So we moved to Fillmore in San Francisco. We moved to Hayward, and then we eventually moved to Fairfield.
And that's what we.
And when we got to Fairfield,
that's when we met.
Exactly.
In the early 2000s, right?
Right. And we moved to Fairfield, we moved to Phoenix Street. So it was like, like we was trying to get out the hood, but we would go to these other cities and still be in the hood kind of by default. And that's just because of the socioeconomic status.
There's a hood.
Exactly. And that's just because of the socioeconomic status. I would later learn that. Like if living in the Bay Area, if your money is in a certain bracket, you're gonna live in between these set of places, And so my parents always try hard to get us into good schools and just areas where we can try and thrive, right? It was always us or me going out looking for ways to just learn life on my own outside of the game I was being given by my step pops and my moms and all of them. They was always telling me how to not bump my head, but I always had to go out there and bump my head.
Thank you. That's where I want to go because there's so much to unpack here. So you said you had an influential was your mom, but what males were in your life? You said you had a stepdad and going up in EPA. What male?
Yep, and my pops too.
Yes, your pops, your stepdads. Talk about those male figures that help influence you to continue your journey.
For sure. My pops, Ray, he always has been the number one inspiration in my corner when it comes from a paternal figure. He stepped in at a time where, I could have went any direction, and he provided guidance, provided structure in my life, positive reinforcement, stuff like that. And he would introduce me to different males in his family, who were stand-up guys. And then my real pops, would eventually get out of prison and change his life. He spent a lot of years in prison, maybe like 12, 13 years of my first 13 years in life in prison. And once he got out, he went back a couple times, but he would also make efforts to eventually not go back. And he did that. And so, we spent a lot of years just trying to regain what was lost from him just spending so much time in prison. But one thing that I really admire and I wrote about in my book, A Legendary Run, is how my step pops, Ray, when he came in, he always would say that I'm here to save your pop's place and not to take it. And he really was the biggest model for me about as it relates to just being a young man, but also had a good number of uncles, cousins, and friends who I met, and they've also been inspirations.
I gotta go back. You said something that kind of impact. He said he's here to save your pop's place, not replace it. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so huge.
Yeah, that was
that's
huge.
A humble thing to say, because it's not to erase your pop. Your pop is always your biological father, is always going to be your biological. By him being that secure in himself, saying, "Listen, I'm here to save that spot. I'm filling in. I will never replace."
Yep.
Man, that's a big quote right there. I appreciate him for that.
Yeah, he's always been a real one. And you know what? He had a great relationship with my father too. Wow. My father actually passed about a year ago. Oh, no. Next week it'll be a year that he passed. And it also be a year since the first book came out. So I actually dedicated that book, A Legendary Run, to my father. Wow. I had to go back and do an edit because it was scheduled to release. So the day that he passed away, it went available for pre-order. I talked to him about 6:00 that morning. He was headed to work. I told him that I got a book coming out in Barnes and Nobles. He responded and said, "Really?" And he was just like, he got to go to work. He's gonna holler at me later. And I got a call an hour later and said he had died. And so I went back and did it at work. He had a heart attack. Oh my God. So yeah, that's been something that's been weighing on me over the year. But through support, family, and just trusting the process and using my pain, to using the pain that I go through to fuel my passion. Right on. Just that idea, that just when I think about that, it kind of helps me deal with what has happened. You know what I mean? As it relates to my father and help me move forward. You know what I mean? Yeah, I'm still hurt over his loss. Yeah, I'm definitely hurt over his loss, but I'm using that to fuel myself moving forward. Right.
We never get over those. You never really get over those, losing a parent. How does that affect you? And you're a parent now as well. So talk about that transition as you transition into a father, going through what you've gone through in your journey. What type of impact of a parent in this generation does that make you? And how does that affect you as a parent and your skills?
Yeah. I feel like I had some great parents. I got a big difference is I got whoopings growing up. But they also I got them at times when I needed them though. My parents were loving parents. They always told me that they love me. That's something that I do with my kids. Ironically, I have children that are not mine biologically as well. Right. And that's an approach that I have with them in to sort of fostering the relationship that they have with their father, making sure that they always answer the phone for him, you know what I'm saying? And letting them know that I'm not here to save his, I'm not here to take his place, but I'm here to save it. Wow. Even though you may not see him every day, that's something that I learned. Right. And it's crazy how I'm a stepfather and I see a lot in them that I seen in myself growing up, just being a child and seeing another man in the house more than you see your own father, you know what I mean? Can be critical, and how that man's temperament can shape you, how that man treats you can shape you, you know what I mean? So I just try to use all the great things that was given to me to give to them. It's not always easy at all. I raise my voice sometimes, and I'm definitely like particular about how I like things around the house, but they're all great kids, man, and I'm just
How many
blessed to
of them
have
are
them
there?
because they
How many total?
total is six. It's six total.
Oh Lord, T-Mazz party of 8. Party. I thought I was in Price party of 5. You got a party of 8, man.
Yeah.
When we come into this untraditional family, it's always some sort of tension. So I admire when people are able to put aside their personal issues to be a stand-up woman or man for that particular child, even if it's not yours. So because of your father, you
Exactly.
learned that, and now you're doing the same thing. I tell my sons, and I never had any stepchildren, but I understand how that works. If you love someone, you love them and everything attached to them. That may be
Everything that come with them. Everything that come with. It's
the whole
definitely. It
package.
ain't. It's all. It's an adjustment, right? It's like anything else in life, on both sides.
Yes,
What I
sir.
mean by that is, like, you know, she got a young son, right? And initially, he was like, "You ain't my daddy. I don't kind of." He literally told me this.
What?
He was standing on top of my counter. He's sitting there standing on top of my counter in the kitchen. I'll go out there and tell us what again. He's like, "You ain't my dad." I don't kinda,
Hey,
so, but I had to
how old was he?
reflect on it though.
How
I
old
did
was
have
he
to
when he
reflect on
said
it.
that? How old
When
was
he said this, he's probably like 8 or 9. He's probably like 8 or 9, and he didn't really understand the impact that his statements had.
he? Right.
But I also had to realize it from his perspective and his lens. It's all an adjustment for everybody. You know what I mean? Everybody involved in this whole family that we've created. We got to allow each person their respective time to adjust the glue we're trying to build between us all as a unit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and he's definitely not slid on any counters, and how I approach like disciplining him is I got a good relationship with his father. So if he tripping, if the little man tripping, and I feel like it's out, like it's coming to the point where he need a whipping or something, or he just not even need a whipping, but just he getting a little out of himself. I'm gonna call his dad, and his dad is gonna have a conversation with him. We may even have a 3-way conversation.
There you
You know what I
go.
mean? And we've done that so many times to where little man understands that we got a
There's a
united
team
front
here.
on this side, and there's nothing you can't squeeze around it, or you know what I mean.
They
So
split you guys.
I like it. I like it.
That's what's that's healthy. Thank you guys for that. Well, parenting is certainly a challenge in itself. So, with all these things you're doing with as an author, as a clinical psychologist, and the work that you do, and as a parent, how much of that do you put in your art form as a rapper and an artist, and how much of that is accepted in the culture? Because hip hop, if you ain't talking about what the mainstream is
Exactly.
talking about, it's hard to get heard. So how do you plant
Exactly.
those seeds? And we're going to talk about the statement made in that video, but let's talk about how do you put much of your work in your art without sounding too preachy
Yeah.
or corny or
Right.
irrelevant.
It's definitely a fine balance, and it's crazy because this was a conversation that me and one of my close friends, Rocky Johnson, have been talking about as we approach this new album. Not to be too preachy, but to also be relevant and all these things. I think it's just a balance. I still rap I've the classic T-Mazz. Where somewhat of a gritty flow. It's lyrical, but it's also educational at the same time. And I think it's just a balance between wordplay, between content selection, between how the delivery, and the tone of your voice and all of that. I think a person can come through and sort of preach in their lyrics, as long as they are mastering all these other different parts or factors in the art form. You know, it's a fan base for it. But the people who have been listening to the music that I've been dropping have been pretty receptive to it, and though that's who motivate me to keep on dropping songs every day or every couple of days.
Right.
Yeah.
I've been in this podcast and my platform, I've been extremely critical of the hip hop generation and the art, the industry, and the dark turn, which I've seen that hip hop music has taken over the last 20, maybe 30 years. Talking about X-Clan, KRS-One, Boogie Down Production, Public Enemy, though they got silenced, and then we fell in love with the gangster rap, with the NWA and Ghetto Boys and all this stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and Tupac and all, and we never turned back. In my opinion, we never turned back. I've seen young men like yourself coming from East Palo Alto fall in love with the image of wanting to be gangster thug and all that, and it led to their demise. So that's why in that video, in a column I wrote, made a statement that rubbed some people the wrong way. You may have heard about it. It said gangster rap, now trap music, in my opinion, is the worst thing to hit the Black community since.
That's a powerful statement. That's a pretty powerful statement right there.
Yeah, let me say, as an artist in that genre, I don't mean to dump on anybody's art form, but what are your thoughts on that?
I don't see a lie in the statement. Gangster rap, and I ain't gonna say all gangster rap because there's different sides to every artist, right? It may be an artist who goes out and he's a serial killer in one song, but he may drop a song about his mama, you know, or about some other love in his life that indicates he has a heart, you know what I mean? So I think you can get a lot from different artists, even the ones who are killing people every song. But generally speaking, a lot of the concepts that gangster rap music has promoted over the years has directly strengthened certain beliefs and young people who follow the music.
Wow.
Certain beliefs such as but if I see a crime happening, even to my own people, even on to my mama, that I have to take matters in my own hands, and I can't. I'll be shamed in my community if I call the police.
Wow.
Even though that's supposed to be their job, right? That same music strengthens certain beliefs in certain people who follow the music, such as it's not okay to have one woman. It's to have multiple women. That it's not that bad to do sets and Oxycontins and these severe prescription medications that, if abused, can kill you. Wow. Right? The same genre of music that strengthens certain beliefs and certain people who follow that music, that's told them, to glorify like being in jail. Right. That the culture of jail, the culture of just thugging, the culture of having guns, and all of these different things that continue to make us be the #1 population in prisons throughout the state of California and other states as well.
Right, nationwide.
Black folks, Mexicans, we the #1 in prison. Like, it's nobody more than us in prison. Yeah, and just some of the concepts that we talk about mostly in music are used by certain listeners to strengthen certain belief systems in them, and they actually believe it. They actually believe that the last thing I would ever do is call the police. The last thing I would ever do is tell on someone. The last thing I will ever do is, just things that's like, ignorant.
Yeah, we certainly.
Not to say that I'm gonna go tell on somebody. I ain't got no reason to go tell on nobody, right?
We've glamorized,
but it's different ways to handle certain things. As you get older, you realize there's different ways to handle certain things. Well, you ain't gotta be no snitch. You ain't gotta be, nobody dishonorable. You just handling business as a grown man. Right. So it just depends on how you look at life.
We've certainly glamorized it. People underestimate the power of influence of entertainment, #1, but even more so, music has a greater impact of influence than any other art form there is, because it can infect you and influence you without even getting your permission. You have to consciously go turn on a movie and enjoy that movie. You can hear a piece of music that's passing by from somebody else's car, and it will get into you, and you'll start beating to it. It's a powerful thing, and we underestimate how powerful influence. But what people who don't really try to justify that, they say, well, it's just entertainment.
Yeah, it goes back to that lyric in that song we were talking about earlier. If you think it, you can feel it.
can feel it.
You can, if you feel it, you're gonna believe it. In psychology, there's a thing called CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. The framework for CBT is that people operate based on belief systems or what they call schemas. And schemas are made up of a particular process. Our thoughts impact our emotions. And as long as we're having thoughts that trigger a certain emotion in us, it will lead to a particular behavior.
Wow. And thought leads to emotion, emotion leads to behavior.
And that further, and as long as that cycle continues, it leads to a belief system. Wow. Whether that's healthy or unhealthy. Wow. As long as you're thinking something, feeling something, and acting on that, and then in that order, or outside of that order. But if those factors are involved in a behavioral process, it increases the likeliness that a person will believe something about this behavior, that this is the right thing to do. And they'll continue to engage in that behavior. And the last part of that line said, you can even break that sequence. So in treatment, the therapy prescribed for people who are having, like, adjustment issues, depression, or, any other type of psychiatric issue, a common therapy described is CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. And what that treatment is designed to do is help a person to restructure those belief systems through first providing education, right? And sort of interrupting that process of thinking one particular thing that may be unhealthy, that's likely unhealthy, especially probably the reason why you came to therapy. Yeah. But thinking something, then leading to a particular emotion, that leading to a particular behavior, and that leading to a particular belief system, which is unhealthy. And you believe this, right? So you continue to do it unconsciously.
Wow. So what you described there is the opposite of what happens in music, because the scripture talks about, you've heard the word inculcate, where this negative ideas are inculcated in your mind, whether it's a song you've been listening to for on and on and on. Eventually it's going into your cognition, and then it's becoming in your belief system, because if you glamorize this, eventually it becomes part of your who you are. I believe it now. If you feel it, now you believe in it. Now the next time you're presented with that situation, it's in your belief system. Then it's eventually it's gonna affect your behavior. So that's just proof, validates that repetitive belief system can lead to your behavior. And these people feeling this music, right? They feel that behavior.
Yeah, especially somebody that believe, if I feel it, I got to do it. If I feel this, then it's me. You know what I mean? Yeah. Then that just speaks to the impulse as well. Yeah, right. So with impulsivity, so down goes decision making, down goes judgment, down goes the attention and focus. All those things are compromised with impulsivity, with substance use, with
Wow.
We can go for days on this.
That's some powerful stuff there, baby. Well, this is good stuff. But let's talk about the how do we get that message? So it's David and Goliath, because the mainstream is going to continue to, the playlist is, if it's sex, violence, ill-spirited messages, it's going to get the shine. It's going to get the radio play. It's going to get the big contracts. How do the artists like T-Mazz or KRS-One or a Christian rap artist, how do they get from under the radar to the point we're reaching our young people? How do you compete with that? How do you get them?
We got to take advantage of social media, and that's where I'm at with it right now, locked in, like providing content every day. And it has to be good content that people can relate to.
Yes, sir.
And then when we're thinking about content, it's a visual aspect and it's an audio aspect. So what they're hearing and what they're seeing has to match, and it has to capture their attention for them to watch the whole thing. So it's a lot of opportunity right now for independent artists. Whether you are rapping about whatever you're rapping about, especially those who have a message. From when you're just looking at social media, looking at some of the rants that's happened, looking at some of the different things that's gone viral as of recently, it's a big movement against music that continues to degrade the Black community.
Oh, absolutely.
I've seen a number of artists and just tastemakers, not just in the Bay, but nationwide, respected too, who, you know, making posts about like, if the song is about killing another Black man, I don't want to hear it. It sucks. Somebody made a post on Thizzlers. So Thizzler is a popular Bay Area website, or it's a popular Bay Area, what do you call it? It's a website, but it's also like they promote Bay Area artists basically, or a blog site, like a blog site.
Okay.
And so they get a lot of traffic though, especially like on Instagram, YouTube, and these different social media accounts. And the songs that they promote, for people outside of the Bay Area, when they're looking at that channel, they're looking at that like, this is the new Bay right now. These are the people who I should be paying attention to. And a lot of them are carrying the same message, right? But I seen somebody post on one of their things the other day. It said something along the lines of, because they posted a number of videos from local rappers, and they asked everybody to comment who's the best video or something like that. And somebody posted, the one who ain't talking about killing another Black man won. And mind you, this site is also operated by Caucasian people.
Okay.
That's another factor that we got to talk about another time. But we got to look at the people too who is promoting these messages, the people who are invested into the culture, you know what I'm saying, for what reasons, you know what I mean? Some people just trying to get a bag off of Black culture right now. Absolutely. It's wide open. And so you see them promoting the negativity, promoting the beef, promoting the drugs, promoting all the guns and all the stuff that continues to keep us in a hole. But this movement that I'm talking about, you got people like D1. D1 is a popular New Orleans artist, and he was directly talking to Meek Mill and Rick Ross just in December about their new record that's talking about pulling up to the light and shooting somebody in the brain and some stuff like that. But at the same time, Rick Ross and Meek Mill had this prison reform movement going last year, right? And so it's like a contradiction. And D1 has like millions. So he brought this concept in front of his followers, like, this is what they're feeding you. They're telling you to stay out of prison, but they're also selling you songs that's telling you to go and do something that's going to land you in prison, right? And so it's kind of waking people up a little bit. Not just that situation, but you see it in different pockets in hip hop. And yes, a lot of people, especially like radio, and the more commercial outlets do promote the BS. Right. But with social media, there's a lot of like rising podcasts that promote educational stuff. Yep, it's more visibility. Exactly. You can create your own podcast or something and get 1 million followers, and you know, next thing you know, you lit. So it's wide open for anybody who independent, willing to put the work into their content right now, and you can literally like be the face of it all.
There you go. I got a couple more.
Yep, no matter what your message is.
What happens as we evolved from young men to seasoned, mature men? We shouldn't be thinking the same way we were when we were in our 20s. We matured.
Right.
So we're gonna use your high profile examples, Dr. Dre, and you know the glamorization of Tupac was never gonna end. And I actually asked them, who was in part of that, saying, what happens when a grown man in his 50s now are talking about the same things they were talking about when they're 20s? What happened to the evolution of maturity? So now we got Ice Cube and all them cats that's talking about, got to take some responsibility because they started this gangster. We got to hold you accountable for it. So, but how can you still do what Rick Ross is doing, talking about prison reform, but at the same style, still talking about murder music? Where's the maturation in that?
Yep. And I think it goes back to the other question we answered earlier about being transparent in all areas of your life, being able to put into your music what you're actually doing, and from your job to when you get home and all of that stuff. I don't even know if we talked about this earlier, but this was a recent conversation about just how to appeal to the masses.
Yes, and rapping about being married, happily married. Where are those songs?
Right. Where I see the game going is it's okay to do that now, and people will actually respect it and buy it too, especially if it sounds good. They're not going to deny it. But to go back to the question, it's I think a lot of people are just chasing a dollar right now.
Yes.
They know that they can make money off of rapping. You don't even have to put a lot of thought into your raps these days to make a lot of money.
Wow.
And that's actually is making the most money the easiest way, the easy raps, right? It's hard. It's actually really hard to write a rap about something other than money, guns, drugs. It's pretty difficult actually, because it involves a different perspective. It involves a different kind of thought process, and to put it in a linear format that rhymes and the delivery is there and everything else that your fans love about you is still there. I think that scares a lot of people, for one. So hip hop it's easy to rap about those same things and actually make money off of them. And with the prison reform, it's a check involved with that for him, right? So I think people are just going anywhere that the money blows them. But when you really sit back and analyze all this stuff and see if it all makes sense in your head, sometimes it don't. Sometimes it don't. And that's where, as fans, they got to take a stand on who they really going to decide to support.
Who you going to support?
A lot of them will still continue to support it, though, because they, you know, at the end of the day, they don't realize that this music strengthens a belief system, or it doesn't for them. They're able to maintain a boundary between what they're listening to and how they actually act in real life. Some people are able to do that. But imagine the people who don't even know that. They because you know our brains operate like computers, right? So it can be difficult to recognize what you're thinking or why you're thinking it, or even why you're acting on something, or why you're feeling a particular way. You can just be going on autopilot throughout your day, not knowing that the reason why you feel in a particular way or have a particular belief system is because you've been listening to this particular song that talks about the same phenomenon that you love, and you know what I'm saying?
And what you end up needing
and have internalized.
And what you end up being is needing that CBT, that cognitive behavior therapy, because we got to reprogram now. I think everybody, they all need CBT.
CBD and CBT. So, and here's the thing about that. You know, I would only prescribe CBT for an individual who, you know, their symptoms have rose to the level of a clinical concern. Just for these everyday cats who just stuck on the couch, stuck playing video games at their mama's house and ain't got no ambition in their life. They're not depressed. He just bumming. You know what I'm saying? But he also may feel certain and believe certain things that he listens to in the songs that he listens to. But it hasn't, you know what I mean? And that also may contribute to the laziness or the complacency.
But it hasn't affected his behavior.
So what some of those people in those situations got to realize is that, man, you had a set of belief systems before you even listened to a hip hop song. But the people who raised you, and even if some of those were unhealthy, you can create your own. People just got to be aware of what they're thinking, what they're feeling, what they're believing. And how you do that is through practicing mindfulness. It's crazy. This is because I just did a group earlier today. We're talking about mindfulness. We got to practice mindfulness. Mindfulness helps ground us to the current moment and time without being judgmental of our circumstances, but just embracing it all, right? When we think too much about the future, it makes us vulnerable to being anxious. When we think too much about the past, especially the sad stuff from the past, it makes us vulnerable to being depressed. That's why it's so important to focus on what's happening right now in this moment, not comparing ourselves to nobody, none of that, but just embrace what's going on, accepting what's happening in our life, and committing ourselves to getting through our circumstances, by all means.
Well, it's a beautiful conversation, brother. We're going to end it on a couple things. I want to recap some of the ways the listeners, This Youth Generation, and the podcast participants can get in contact with T-Mazz, your contact information,
yes, sir,
your social media sites, your products, your latest work, your book. I want to recap on all. Start with your site.
So you can, for sure. So my website is lovecloudrestore.com. Lovecloudrestore, all, spell it all out.com. The album that's coming out February 2nd, 2024 is titled Unbreakable. My Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, is all at the only T-Mazz, the only T-M-A-Z-Z. On YouTube, I'm at T-Mazz TV, T-M-A-Z-Z TV, and on Facebook it's T-Mazz. Yep, that's pretty much all my handles.
Good. All right. Well, look, I always like to end on a couple of bars. You want to close us out? Give me about 8 to 16 to plant the seed. If you wanted to give us something to go with, let's leave us with a little something. Give us a little something to think about.
Okay. All right.
Yes, sir.
Uh-oh. He done pulled up with a truckload. I ain't got to rap again. What I got a stunt for? The car, you got to back it in. Feel like the trunk gone. Pass me the rock. I'm looking for someone to dunk on. T-Mazz. I'm rocking with Deon. This is Life Skills Academy. You know that we on. 8 bars, that's it. I'm about to check out. Cop my album. It's amazing. I'm out of here, man.
Man, I appreciate it. Thank you for lacing up with that little freestyle.
Love you, bro. Love you,
back,
bro.
Proud of you. Keep doing what you're doing. Thank you for blessing us with your presence, and your impact is making a difference, whether you like it or not. There's love there, brother. I appreciate you. Thanks again, brother. Appreciate
Let's do it.
All right,
Peace.
now.